Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Monday edition of our show. I'm your host, Joe Grado. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking a part of your Monday, kicking off a new week with us here at A's Day. Today is Monday, November 17th. We got a good show for you. A's signed a couple players to continue on with their offseason transactions as we are in the early stages of offseason activity, but the A's are beginning setting the foundation, making some small moves. We'll discuss what these look like and what impact they may have on the 2026 squad. Then we will talk about reports of a potential free agent splash based on a fit from ESPN's Jeff Passan released an article upon which he envisioned one big free agent being the perfect fit for the A's to go out and sign. We'll discuss who he had in mind and what that would look like, once again, for the 2026 team and beyond. And then with that, we will wrap up by exploring, because rumors have been circulating once again, what a trade of Luis Severino from this team would have in terms of ramifications of what that would look like in terms of getting something in return. We'll see. We'll dive into that and more, give our thoughts before we get on out of here. So we appreciate you tuning in, listening to our thoughts on A's baseball, and after the opening music, we'll get right to it. Holy Toledo, let's go A's. All right there, A's Day fans. Thank you for taking part of your Monday once again, for hearing our thoughts on everything A's baseball. Before we get into our first topic of discussion, just want to remind you to continue to download wherever you can find us on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, iHeartRadio, so many more. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you can listen to A's Day too as well. All right, let's jump into our first topic of discussion. The A's last week signed two players. So let's start with the first one. We'll do it in chronological order. This past Wednesday, they signed Nick Anderson to a minor league contract with the A's that includes an invitation to big league spring training. Anderson, he is a reliever with some closing experience entering his age 35 season. He made 12 appearances in the majors for Colorado this past season, turning in a 6.14 ERA and a 1.30 whip across 14 2/3 innings. Most of his time was spent at AAA this past season with three organizations, starting out the year in the Seattle system, then joining the Cardinals AAA club before ending up with Colorado. He's going to earn a chance here, or receive a chance here, to earn a redemption himself with a competition of earning a spot in the A's bullpen that is in dire need of depth. But most likely to start off the year, he will report to AAA unless he blows the A's away in spring training. He's got the stuff to do it. It's just a matter if he can get back to throwing with that intent and staying healthy too as well. If he does crack the big league roster, this deal will turn into a $1 million contract for him. So certainly plenty on the line for Nick Anderson to accomplish in 2026. This does bring in some veteran experience into the bullpen. However, it's been quite some time since we've been treated to some of his best years. His best years came prior to undergoing elbow surgery in 2021. He was a late bloomer. He didn't make his MLB debut till he was 28. He made a combined 87 appearances for the Marlins and Rays from 2019 to 2020, posting a 2.77 ERA with 136 strikeouts and 21 walks in 81 1/3 innings pitched. He also recorded 7 saves over that stretch. Absolute dominant stuff. Now let's fast forward. Post-surgery, Anderson posted a 3.06 ERA in 35 games for the Braves in 2023 and a 4.04 ERA in 37 appearances for the Royals. So, looking at this, you would think that 2025 was an anomaly, Granted, he's not going to be at the peak of his powers. He's definitely closer to the end of his career as compared to the start of it. But this does have the opportunity to be a low-risk, high-reward situation. A's are going to undoubtedly look beyond Anderson to add to this bullpen, but he does fit what they were looking for in bringing in arms that have closing experience. Now, I don't think necessarily he is going to end up being their everyday closer nevertheless. He's definitely going to be in the running, but I think worst case scenario, like we mentioned a couple minutes ago, we do believe Anderson is going to be someone that's going to start the year at AAA, but you know how the 162 marathon goes. There's definitely going to be a need for a substantial amount of arms to get through the long slog. So you're hoping that this low risk, high reward benefits tremendously, because if he gets back even to in the ballpark of what Anderson was at the peak of his powers, this could be a guy that turns into a closer, but he could be a setup man or a bridge guy nevertheless. I do envision him being a one-inning guy, so you're expecting him to come in and be that back end. Now, I think it depends on the direction the A's go in this offseason. I'm sure they're going to explore some trades. They're going to explore the free agent market. On the free agent market side of things, it's just a matter of getting guys that are going to want to play in Sacramento. On the trade market, there's definitely plenty of movable pieces, whether it's between prospects or even teams that may be looking for a major league ready bat, where you could make a swap for a reliever. He does have 10 career saves and a 3.43 ERA in 177 games across 6 big league seasons, so you're hoping that pedigree can translate to knock up or scratch off 2025 and chalk it up to just it being an anomaly, because 2023 and 2024, 2023 was solid with a barely over a 3 ERA, and even 2024 being a tick over 4, it's not necessarily an elite arm, but it's serviceable. And if they can get something like that, a low 4, high 3 type ERA reliever here, I think this is going to look like a pretty good contract. Not saying it's a definite or what he's going to look like coming out of coming into spring training camp and coming out of it after, but what this could turn into is a lot better than if it doesn't work out. This isn't a huge investment. Worst case scenario, he spends the year again once at the minor league level and go from there. But this is absolutely a prove-it deal for Anderson entering his age 35 season, like I mentioned. He's got pretty good stuff. I'm really excited to see if he still got it in the tank, because I do remember him from those Rays days, and he was absolutely dominant. Filthy stuff, a filthy repertoire, and he's got the back-end closing mentality without a doubt. So very excited to see if this does pan out. I like the move personally. I mean, with only investing up to $1 million here, no harm, no foul, in my opinion. But really rooting for Anderson here. This was something that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on during spring training. Obviously, you're going to see if he could. It would be amazing if he can even get back to who he was pre-surgery. But like I mentioned, if we get a high 3, low 4 ERA type guy, this is going to look like a really savvy move by GM David Forst. But I like that the A's are addressing their areas of need, and it's very early in the offseason, so they're just getting started. And looking forward to seeing if this pans out or not. Definitely will be a future topic of discussion. The other player, as we move along here, that the A's signed, this happened, I believe, on Friday. Oh, no, Saturday. Excuse me, I believe it was this past Saturday. The Athletics are in agreement with first baseman Joey Meneses on a minor league contract. The deal also includes an invitation to MLB Spring Training camp. He spent this past season in AAA with the Mets in Syracuse. He's coming off a 265 average, 322 on base, and a 447 slugging line with 11 home runs at the top minor league level. Not many walks, and posted average to below average batted ball marks. He had an uphill battle this past season, not really being able to crack the major league roster, with him being a first baseman. And he does play outfield, but primarily he is a first baseman. It was an uphill battle for him because he was stuck behind Pete Alonso, who had an amazing season himself, and then also Mark Vientos, who could play first and third base too as well. He's going to face a similar battle here with the A's, as he's going to be stuck behind Nick Kurtz, who more than proved that he is going to be the everyday first baseman for the A's. And then you have Brent Rooker that can play some first base, play some out. He's primarily an outfielder. Well, he's primarily a DH. DH outfield, but he can play some first base as well. There's going to have to be a need here for him to try some sort of outfield platoon. He mashes lefties, so there could be a spot on this team for him. The 33-year-old is likely to head to AAA to start the season so that he can get those regular at-bats, and when his time is called, there's going to be a need. Because at the end of the day, you want to say that the 26 you break camp with is the 26 that you're going to end the season with, but you know how the 162 goes. I've mentioned this already a couple times in this episode, that between a mixture of some guys being ineffective and the unavoidable slew of injuries that seems to constantly plague our game in the modern day, there's going to be a need for more than just who breaks camp. So Meneses is going to be a very interesting target. Like I said, I think he's going to be pretty down the depth chart. So for him to continue to stay ready and be able to continue to produce those power numbers, it's probably going to be smartest for him to at least start the season at the AAA level. Meneses, just to get to know a little bit more about him, he played in the big leagues with the Nationals between the 2022 and 2024 seasons. He had a huge showing out of nowhere. This was not someone that was necessarily the highest regarded prospect. He had a huge rookie season, the 30-year-old rookie. He had .324 with 13 home runs in his first 56 games. Meneses is currently now playing for the Mexican Pacific Winter League as he gets ready to fight for a spot on this A's big league club out of spring training. As of November 15th, he's batting .258 in the Winter League with a .320 on-base percentage. I think I could see Meneses being on this team sometime over the summer, like that late May, early June timeline. Now, I hope that's not due to injury or ineffectiveness or anything like that, but that is most likely when Meneses will get the call. So you don't want that to wish that on anyone, but if that doesn't happen, I don't know how much of Joey Meneses we'll see on this roster in 2026. Because the outfield, even if he does go to the outfield, they have Tyler Soderstrom in left, who was a Gold Glove finalist and had a pole-to-pole solid season in 2025. You got Denzel Clark in center, and you got Lawrence Butler in right, with Brent Rooker being a DH, but also the fourth outfielder. So, again, another uphill battle. I think he's really going to have to turn some heads at spring training. He does have light tower power, so I do think that could really help him find a spot, at least a spot off the bench. But then there are guys that can do a little bit more, and they love having left-handed batters on the bench too as well, like a Carlos Cortez. I feel like is going to factor into the equation of being one of the most likely 13 position players to crack the opening day roster, and then you have your backup catcher, and that leaves two spots. So it'll be really interesting to see if Meneses can land one of those, or, like we mentioned, he's going to be starting the year at AAA and then just continue to fight that uphill battle that he fought with the Mets last year. So time will tell. We'll see. But as a depth bat, he'd have to beat out guys also like Colby Thomas, like I said, Carlos Cortez, but then also J.J. Bleday, the forgotten outfielder. And there is a chance that Bleday will be traded to a team that needs a left-handed bat. In exchange, I could see Bleday being involved in a trade for a reliever or prospect, something like that. But I don't envision Bleday having much of an impact on the 2026 season. But again, if he does come into camp with the A's, all he has to do is get off to a good start in spring training and prove to the coaching staff that 2025 was just an anomaly. He could bounce back in a big way. But I do see Meneses having a little bit more upside at this point. Because Meneses' bat has been so good at every level, he could have a shot, but I think a trade is going to happen. Like I said, it's either going to have to be a trade in the offseason, it's going to have to be an injury, or ineffectiveness most likely for Meneses to crack this roster. A's also do have outfielders in AAA that could be ready for a look soon. So that could make some of these depth pieces also expendable via trade, like a Colby Thomas. He still has all three of his minor league options remaining, so he's either going to be also a potential trade candidate or could see himself starting at AAA, because there were flashes of what he can do, but I think he was a little bit more streaky, and I do think He has all this raw ability, but there needs to be a little bit more sharpening of the tools. So very excited to see how this all plays out. But I love this move. And I like to look at everything objectively. And again, are these two moves that we're talking about, are they going to move the needle and be the difference between this team making the postseason and not? I don't think so. I don't. And I'll be more than happy to admit I'm wrong if Joey Meneses or Nick Anderson are the pivotal center or big center reasons as to adding several wins to this club. I don't imagine that. I see between the two, probably Anderson having more of an impact at the big league level. Again, if he's still effective and still has has enough health in that right arm. But in terms of how this team is shaped currently, there's a lot more of an opportunity to land a spot in the bullpen that could use more depth significantly as compared to the A's having a top 5, top 10 offense in all of baseball. There's plenty of guys that they feel pretty confident in, especially at those corner positions and in the outfield too as well. So it's going to be hard to see Meneses make a big impact. But at the end of the day, I think if there are setbacks, Meneses is a great replacement to have in your system. So we'll see how it all pans out. All in all, I think they did a good job here. They didn't really put a dent into the payroll at all. But I think they got two guys that could be helpful at some point and play their role. Well, time will tell. We'll have to see what spring training looks like, and then maybe we'll have an update there. But best of luck to Nick Anderson and Joey Meneses. Welcome to the green and gold, and hopefully you do make an impact in 2026 and beyond. Time will certainly tell. Okay, let's move along to our next topic of discussion. So there was a report, and this was an article written by ESPN insider Jeff Passan. Great read, and he always puts out good content. So if you don't know about him, be sure to check him out. Definitely talks about the game the right way. Fan of his, no doubt. He had a discussion beginning with the idea. So what he did, he had an offseason article talking about the biggest pressing need for each team in the big leagues. So he had notes about all 30 teams. And when he got to the A's, it's pretty obvious that the A's need to upgrade starting pitching along with the bullpen to bolster his team to a potential postseason run. Plenty of arms on the market, but Jeff Passan suggested that the A's could shock the market and sign one of the higher profile available arms. This is an excerpt from Passan's article when regarding the perfect transaction for the club during free agency. He did this for each team. It's a good read for sure. He has a perfect transaction. It's a great read on ESPN. Check it out. The excerpt reads as follows. Now, they need pitching, badly. Starters, relievers, whatever. While it's not in owner John Fisher's nature to spend on players, bringing in a high ground ball, low homer southpaw whose stuff would play even in the nightmare pitcher's environment in Sacramento would be the sort of move that could push the A's that much closer to their first playoff appearance since 2020. So, this was his perfect transaction. Sign free agent left-hander Ranger Suarez. Who is Ranger Suarez? He's a 30-year-old left-handed pitcher. He's been with the Philadelphia Phillies for the last 8 seasons. He's emerged as one of the game's best left-handed pitchers, best pitchers in the game overall, in my opinion. He seems very consistent and shows up in a big way in the postseason year in and year out. His career line is as follows. He's pitched to a 53-37 record with a 3.38 ERA. In 762 innings pitched, he's allowed 240 walks, logged 705 strikeouts, and pitched to a 1.27 whip. He did earn a spot on the National League All-Star team for his efforts in the 2024 season, but I think he's coming off a 2025 season that he was even better. In his walk year, I think he definitely put himself in a position to garner the attention of various teams around the league. On the 2025 campaign, he made 26 starts, pitched to a 12-8 win-loss record with a 3.20 ERA, and 157 in the third innings pitched, allowed 38 walks, 151 strikeouts, and a 1.22 whip. His expected contract value is expected to range from 5 to 6 years in length, ranging from 125 to 153 million, projecting an average annual value between 20 and 25 million per year. He did decline the 1-year $22.025 million qualifying offer, so whatever team does decide to sign Ranger Suarez, they will have to relinquish a draft pick to the Phillies. With an abundance of free agents, now looking at the Philly side, including Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, the Phillies need to invest in, more Schwarber, he's going to garner a massive amount on the payroll. While they are going to pursue Suarez. Just from recent quotes from Dave Dombrowski, it doesn't seem like Suarez is necessarily at the top of their priority list. And it blows my mind because I think they need him direly. Because when you look at the Phillies' outlook, that championship window is closing rapidly. That team is aging quickly. And they're going to come into 2026 with some question marks in terms of their pitching staff. Zach Wheeler, he had his season ended short due to injury. It's not guaranteed that he'll be back right away. And then even when he does come back, is he going to be the same pitcher for the duration of the season? We will see. But then after that, Suarez being there at the top of the rotation. Now, if you have a less effective Wheeler and no Suarez, all of a sudden, that pitching rotation lacks a lot of depth. And that is something that the Phillies are going to need if they want to get over that hump that it seems like they can't. They've been getting to the postseason regularly, but they haven't been able to get past. They haven't been able to bring it home all the way. They've gotten to the World Series. They lost to the Astros. They've lost a couple times the championship series, the division series. Someone just seems to get in their way. So it's just, they're going to have to get a little creative. And I'll tell you what, I think Suarez should be towards the top of their list because he knows Philadelphia, he knows the market, he knows the division, and he's pretty consistent against all of them. So we'll see what that looks like. I know some teams have been noted interested. I think the A's should make a phone call here and bring in Suarez for a meeting. But other teams, the Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs, the New York Mets, and the Toronto Blue Jays have showed vested interest in acquiring Suarez for his pitching services. So, what contract would it take? So, in my opinion, I think the A's are going to have to blow their competition out of the water. And now I'm not saying that's necessarily the best mode of action for any free agent, but I think when it's an area of need and you have an opportunity to bring in a high-end free agent pitcher, I think you might have to make a little bit of an exception. And you also take a look at how old he is, only entering his age 30 season. Well, that's not necessarily someone that's in their 20s and someone that's going to be here 10 years. But in my opinion, I think, and that's how a lot of these long-term contracts go, you pay for the value that you're going to get at the front of the contract, and you'll eat what the pitcher may be towards the back end of their career. Now, with this contract that I think it's going to take to land him, you're still going to get mostly a good Ranger Suarez because the contract that I envision is going to be somewhere like 6 years, 135. I think you're going to have to add in an option there too as well, or you can do 5 years, 135 with a 6-year option, something like that. Because I think a lot of teams are going to offer him the 5 years and do the 6. You might have to do 6 with a 7th-year option. And, if you do that, that takes you through age 37 season. So 36 if he declines the option at that point. But a pitcher, a veteran at that point that's at the back end of their career, more chances than not, he's going to be less effective than he is going to be in 2026. So for his own security to secure a roster spot and income, I'm sure he would accept that player option at that point. But you are going to have to do something to entice a high market free agent to come to a place that was polled as the least desirable in Sacramento to come to out of anywhere in the league. Now, I think it's a combination of the minor league facility that they're currently playing in, but also the bad reputation that has been bestowed upon the league from their front office operations. So I know it's going to take time to correct that image, and they've done a lot to get in their own way, but I do think if you start taking the proper steps and building a postseason championship-like team, then maybe you're going to start getting more guys that are going to want to come here. Because how last year went, yeah, the A's took massive step forwards in my opinion. But with how the season started and, they brought in Luis Severino on a 3-year deal, that was the biggest free agent contract that they had doled out in the John Fisher era. Didn't start off so well. There's a lot of rumblings of Severino not being happy pitching in Sacramento, to the point there was rumors that he was going to get traded at the deadline to recoup whatever they can and cut their losses. Now, if they would have done that, that would have ruined the direction of their franchise, in my opinion, because, yes, you have a lot of internal talent. You're developing a lot of the farm system. That's fantastic. Hats off to the baseball operations team. But you're seeing the trend of baseball, how it is now, that you're going to need to bring in free agents. You're going to have to assemble a team. It's not going to all be homegrown. You're going to have to bring in pieces that are going to fit the puzzle the best way possible. You're going to have to do that with free agency. You have to do that with trades. Now, trades is just team for team. So that's just a matter if one team has what the other team's looking for, you can get a trade done, no problem. Free agency, though, you got to treat these guys right. And I'm not saying that the A's treated Sevy poorly. I don't think that was the case. I think it was a tough adjustment for him in his first year. But I think if you go in this direction here to try to make Sacramento and playing for the A's be a more desirable place, especially with their impending move to Las Vegas, which I think will entice more players at that point, I think you're going to have to overpay a little bit, in my opinion. I'm not saying you do this for everyone, but I think Ranger Suarez would be worth it, especially he fits into what they need. A top-end rotation type of guy that can make an impact, and I can see Suarez pitching playoff games in the green and gold. Imagine a rotation: Suarez, Severino, Springs, Morales, and Lopez. That'll make you a contender. I'm not saying World Series. I'm not saying anything like that. But I'll have you at least knocking at the door, and why wouldn't they be a wild card? And who knows what the pure direction of the AL West. I know Seattle is going to be solid coming into this year, but aside from that, there's a lot of questions around what direction the Astros are going in. The Angels are going to be the Angels. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to win some games in this division, and if you bring in a high leverage or a high price free agent, top of the rotation arm like that, that's going to be a big direction in the right way. It's going to add some wins to your club. I think it's going to be well received by everyone in that clubhouse. So I say do it. My opinion, I think it makes sense. We'll see. I don't know if Suarez is going to want to come here. I'm sure, where these teams are now, I'm sure Boston would be more enticing. Even Chicago, I'm sure pitchers love pitching at Wrigley with those winds blowing everywhere. But, having that rotation, adding in Suarez with a top 5 to 10 offense, that's going to be something formidable if I had to say so myself. So, very intriguing to see. Hope we get to have an episode where we say, and you see the title on Apple Podcasts, or again, wherever you listen to us, where it says, A's sign left-handed pitcher Ranger Suarez. Wouldn't say that I called it, but we're really trying to speak it into ether here because he is as consistent as it comes. And I think he'd be a really good fit here. Him being a ground ball pitcher in the second most hitter-friendly park in all of the league. I think this is a good combination for success. Time will certainly tell. Okay, with that, let's take a quick break. We're going to do a ad read for one of our supporters. We appreciate the Holiday Inn Sacramento Downtown Arena for hosting us for a previous content trip to capture all the hot spots of Sacramento, as well as being able to capture exclusive content with prior to an A's home game. So appreciate the Holiday Inn for what they did for us, being the absolute best guests and treating us to accommodations of absolute comfort. So we'll do a quick ad read for them, and then we'll be right back to the back end of today's show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Stay at our downtown Sacramento hotel. Stay, work, and play at Holiday Inn Sacramento Downtown Arena near the shopping, dining, and entertainment of the historic old Sacramento waterfront. A 15-minute drive from Sacramento International Airport, our downtown hotel is a few blocks from the Golden One Center, home of the Sacramento Kings, and downtown Commons, and a short walk from the California State Capitol and Safe Credit Union Convention Center. Host meetings and events in our boardrooms and ballrooms. Work out in our fitness center and take a dip in our rooftop pool. Enjoy breakfast at Cypress Grill or gather with friends and colleagues for dinner and drinks. Unwind in our comfortable rooms and suites with amenities and cityscape views. We are the ideal choice for your Sacramento adventure. All right, let's get to our last topic of discussion today. With trade rumors circulating around, like I think we hinted at it at the top of today's show, certainly would get a large chunk off of the payroll. We'll see what this looks like. We are going to discuss what would a Luis Severino trade do. So, Sevy, he signed here last offseason to be the ace of the staff. He holds the record for the largest contract ever, like I mentioned earlier in the show, in the John Fisher era, where he signed a 3-year, $67 million deal. Earlier this season, there were reports leading up to the trade deadline that the A's couldn't wait to trade Sevy. Sevy had made several comments about not enjoying pitching in Sacramento and adjusting to the facilities that he had grown so accustomed to. He did rebound with a strong second half and seemed like he strengthened his relationship with the front office with open dialogue and communication with GM David Forst. Could a trade happen? Absolutely, it could. While both sides have grown stronger, there's been enough conflict that a future issue could have the pot boiling pretty quickly. Should it happen? What do you think? Let us know. Comment wherever you can find us on our social media platforms. But I'm going to say no. And I'll tell you why. First, wouldn't it be difficult for the A's to find a suitable trade partner with interest in Sevy's services? I'd like to think so. He's owed $25 million in 2026 and has one more year on his deal. While he did finish the season strong, the numbers are still the numbers over the course of the full season. Pitching to a 4.54 ERA, being owed that much, would be tough to deal, with the A's most likely having to eat some of the contracts. So that doesn't make sense. I know in some cases it does. When it comes with a player, sometimes at the end of their contract, or sometimes it's guys that are just flat out ineffective, that sometimes it makes more sense to cut your losses, eat some money, and then move forward. But here, I don't think that's the case, because I think Severino had a much better second half, because I'd mentioned this on previous shows talking about other players that are new free agents in their first season. I think baseball players are such creatures of habit that sometimes it takes more time for some guys than others to adjust to a new environment. Some guys are really adaptable, other guys not so much. I don't know what side of the spectrum Sevy falls, but based on what I'm hearing, or based on what I saw, it seemed like it took him a few months to get used to it, right? I mean, Luis Severino, this is a guy that came from the bright lights of New York, Yankee Stadium, Citi Field. Those are two of the best major league facilities, at least clubhouse-wise, and what these guys have at their fingertips to prepare to do their job every fifth day. And all the players on the roster. And then going from that to pitching in a AAA ballpark. And I think the A's have done a pretty good job of transitioning that from the facilities that the Sacramento River Cats use to making some upgrades to give it that major league feel as much as possible. Now, with Sevy being a little bit more of a fly ball pitcher, I think that's where he ran into some trouble. And I think that's why you saw him have a 6+ ERA at home, but a 3 ERA on the road. At one point, he was like the first or second best pitcher in terms of road ERA in the league. That was at least halfway through the season. So I think year 2 is going to be better. And I think all in all, Severino, he did hit the IL once, but I think the last 2 seasons, he's really gotten back to being a lot healthier than he was from like 2020 to 2023, where it seemed like he was back and forth on the IL pretty consistently. But I do think his body is in a position where he's found something that works, that keeps him on the field much more than not. And I think by season's end, and I think he had one of his, if not his best, his top 2 starts of all of 2025, his last start of the season. So hopefully he can use that as a springboard of positive momentum into a much better 2026. The stuff is still there. His breaking stuff moves so many inches. He's got guys flailing, changing speeds, all like pretty consistently. When he's on, he's still really good. Is he the best ace? No, probably not. But he could still be a very, very solid top end starter in a rotation. And that's what he's been signed here to do. He's been signed to be their ace. I think this is going to be a make or break it for Sevy. I think if you start seeing him having some of those home issues once again in terms of having an inflated ERA as compared to on the road, I think some of those negative connotations might rise again, and then by the middle of the season, you may see a trade happen there. But I wouldn't do it now. I wouldn't. And you can't use money as an excuse. I mean, right now, and I do know there's going to be money added to this payroll by the start of 2026. There's still free agency and trades and arbitration to get through. But currently, they only have around $48 million committed to the payroll for 2026. There is plenty of money to spend. There's plenty of money that you can add to this team. You have plenty of your stars under team control for a considerable amount of time. They've done extensions with Rooker and Butler. I do think there's going to be more extensions on the way, potentially with Kurtz, maybe with Soderstrom, perhaps Jacob Wilson. But if you get this young core with team-friendly deals, then there's no excuse for you to go out there and be able to add. I'm not saying go out there and buy everyone, but I would love to see one top-end starter, maybe a top second baseman, something like that, or a bat, just to start, and then add to that bullpen, and you really got a pretty good club going into 2026. Plus, speaking of top-end starters, like we were just talking about, I mentioned signing a guy like Ranger Suarez to a player-friendly contract because, my opinion, what we were mentioning, talking about 6 years and maybe providing a seventh-year team option, that is very player-friendly. In fact, I think, obviously the New York Yankees are a very desirable place to sign as a free agent, but I believe that they felt like they were in a significant bidding war for Max Fried's services when he was a free agent after his time with the Braves. They gave him 8 years because I believe that if they were stuck at 6 or 7, there's a possibility he might have gone to Atlanta. Maybe would have ended up at another destination. Who knows? But I think sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith. And even if you pay for it later down the road, you're going to hope it's really going to reap its rewards earlier on in the contract. And where this team is trending right now, I'm not saying they're going to win it all this year, but I think they'll have a much closer opportunity to do it in year 2 of a long contract like that. And then if you end up with a top 2 with Sevy and Suarez, and Springs, I think, is the model of consistency. Then you got Lopez and Morales on the back end. You're going to start signaling to the team, to the rest of the league, that the A's are going to now be operating with more consistent good intentions. They've returned to the front office, and there is a consistent commitment to build a winning product. If you end up trading Sevy in the second year of a 3-year deal, you could say goodbye to free agents, at least for the foreseeable future. Because if you're going to come in here and you're going to sign a 3, 4, 5-year deal, you feel like as that player, you can put your roots down here. And if you're in the process of maybe starting a family, or you do have a family and they're getting close to school years, you want at that point when you're in a position where you're going to earn a long-term contract like that, you've paid your dues. And this is an opportunity for you to reap the benefits of what you've accomplished in your career thus far. And I think it's really important to be a man of your word. I do think that's really important. So if you trade Sevy this year, granted, unless he's really declined or he turns into a negative in the clubhouse, that's the only way you do it, but I don't see either of those happening. I see Sevy hovering around a high 3, low 4 ERA. Is that an ace? No. It's better than this year, though. And I think also what he offers in terms of leadership in the clubhouse. Every time you're watching an A's game, you see these younger guys talking to Severino in the dugout, picking his brain, learning how to be a pitcher, how to be a professional. That's important. Money can't buy that always. I think sometimes that outvalues that. But it's really important. Because I feel like, especially as the season went on, he really turned into more and more of a leader. And you can see the guys on the team really gel with him. So I do think this is just a matter of getting used to a new daily routine, new commute, new teammates, new mound, new home stadium, a lot of new. But now coming into year 2, he should have all of that, more of his ducks in a row. I think we're going to see a better version of Sevy in 2026. Not saying it's going to be prime Sevy, but I think it'll be closer than that than what we saw this past season. I can't wait to see the next Sevy screen in 2026. The guy's an absolute gamer. Get him back in the postseason. You'll really like what you see. With his postseason experience, I can envision a wild card series victory with him leading the charge on the bump and setting the tone for an ascending A's team to perhaps make some noise in the postseason dance. Time will tell. But what would a Sevy trade do? It may set this team back, not because of what he can do between the lines, but it could prevent the growth of this A's team in the future. Like I mentioned, if you cut ties with a guy in the middle of a free agent contract you just signed last year, it's not going to look too good. And it's going to send the wrong message to future free agents to not come to Sacramento or Vegas or wherever this A's team is, because you'll know if they're going to honor the contract. When you're going in free agency as a player, the place you pick is where you want to be. And I know some guys are 1-year deals, sometimes are 2, but a longer-term deal guy, they envision, yes, that they'll have success on the field and they'll gel with the guys on this team and be in a position to help this team get better as compared to the opposition. But I think it's really important that you don't signal to the league. And more importantly, too, besides between the lines, what you're investing in is life. You're setting roots down. This is your new home for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever type of contract you sign. So I think if the A's are smart, and granted, as long as Severino doesn't take massive steps down in decline of his performance, as long as which he has no track record of being a problem in any clubhouse. In fact, he's always been well-received, well-revered, and well-respected. So I can't even imagine what that would look like. I know he made some comments last year, but he's frustrated. He's human. So what? Should he have done that internally? Maybe. But I'm not going to hold it against him. It wasn't anything detrimental to anybody on the team. It wasn't detrimental because there was probably several guys that had that sentiment in that clubhouse, and he was the leader that came out and said it. So, all in all, I think 2026, Severino should be an A, and he should be there for at least the duration of his contract. If you have Severino Springs and bring in a free agent arm, coupled with this top 10 offense, 2026 could be a very fun year. A lot more fun than many people in the national coverage of baseball could even imagine. And with that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of A's Day. On today's show, we talked about the A's signing 2 players. They signed Nick Anderson and Joey Meneses, both minor league contracts, but both with an invitation to Major League camp and spring training, and both will have the opportunity to earn a spot on the big league roster. We'll see what impact they have on 2026 and beyond. We looked into Jeff Passan's claim of the perfect fit with the A's making a big splash in free agency and signing left-handed pitcher Ranger Suarez to a long-term deal. I am a big advocate of that. Would love to see him at the top of this rotation. And then we wrapped up today's show envisioning the effects of what a Luis Severino trade would do to the franchise on and off the field. We'll be back on Friday behind the mic. One of the A's main areas of need is upgrading the bullpen. We're going to take a deep dive into the free agent market as well as some potential trade options that the A's can view in terms of bringing guys in to make that more of a strength. And then we will be back continuing on with this player in A's history as we are going to go back to the 80s and talk about a player from there. So you'll have to tune in on Friday's show to learn who we decide to continue to tell the story of the A's franchise about. And then between today and Friday's show, we'll get caught up to speed of any future transactions that do occur. So we'll be sure to keep you all up to speed and keep us all plugged in, waiting patiently for the return of baseball in spring training and the 2026 season and beyond. That's all I have for today. Appreciate each and every one of you once again kicking off your week with us here at A's Day. I'm your host, Joe Grado. Take care, everyone, and we'll be back talking A's baseball once again on Friday. Holy Toledo. Let's go A's.